One question that I want to get your take on here is kind of a big picture thing, right? Which it feels like what's happening now is that they're doing all these executive orders, and then they go to the courts, and the courts say, "No, you can't do whatever it is." And there's a couple of these things, I think, with the NIH freeze and some other things where, Trump is just basically ignoring the court order. So it seems to me that if I remember my civics correctly, that this is coming now to a constitutional crisis moment. Is that what's happening? Do you see that happening? And how on earth would that get resolved?
Well, it is a constitutional crisis, like 5 alarm fire, 10 alarm fire, and it's going to get worse because the first part of the constitutional crisis is that John Roberts paved the way for Trump to return to office and effectively pardoned him retroactively and prospectively, basically creating this notion that he could do no wrong and not be held accountable, for any crimes. And from day one, sort of minute one after the swearing in to faithfully execute a constitution that he, by Robert's order, is not actually bound to follow, that he can transgress, he's been transgressing the Constitution and statutes. And so it's just been, hour after hour, day after day of edicts, things that are dressed up as executive orders that are in violation of a thicket of laws. Mm-hmm. Laws about personnel, laws about civil servants, laws about, how people serve on these boards, the terms that they serve, who can serve on a board, Republicans or Democrats, and the mixture of those, laws about contracts and grants and how those things work. And so we entered the constitutional crisis at 12:01 on January 20th, and it has not ceased. It's just expanded exponentially. And like you said, he in essence, like when they got the first order against them, then they pretended to basically withdraw the memo, and then said it wasn't really withdrawn, it was still in effect. And then the court ordered that they tell people that in fact it is non-binding, and then they honored that for maybe less than 24 hours, and then decided that they had some other angle. If this were, a corporation where you were firing someone and you said, I'm firing them because they were going to spend $50 million on condoms in Gaza, and that was completely false. And then you doubled down and said, no, it's $100 million on condoms for a war zone. Completely incoherent argument. And then you're like, no, wait, we have this other argument for why we can do this. The court would say, this is pretext. This is unlawful. You can't just make up an array of reasons to do something and then substitute more reasons and other reasons. You have to follow the rules. And so we have a rule breaker, a convicted felon in the White House. I think there should be those bracelets that say, what would Jesus do? WWJD. Mm-hmm. I thought, really the hashtag is, what would a sex offender do? What would a sexual abuser do? Since that's the term you have to use with Trump after the settlement with ABC. What would a sexual abuser do? He would appoint someone accused of sexual assault to head the Pentagon. What would a sexual abuser do? He would appoint this person and these incompetent people to do his bidding. What would
a criminal do?
Yeah, what would a person with no character do? They would do all the things we're seeing unfolding, and do it in disregard, of the law, of the rules, of the regulations. And then, in contrast, we had this Supreme Court, John Roberts, basically saying Joe Biden couldn't issue student debt relief. Oh no, we can't have this really modest student debt relief that exceeds the president's powers. And now we have a president exceeding his powers basically on an hourly basis with the help of the richest man in the world. The court hasn't yet considered that, the Supreme Court. The lower courts are following the law and, they're sanding the gears. But we are in a constitutional crisis because John Roberts helped pave the way for Donald Trump to return to power and not be held accountable.